The ancient Chinese changed dynasties by what was known as the Mandate of Heaven. When cataclysmic events occurred, it was the belief of the Orientals that this signified a need for dynastic change, that the gods were displeased with human government. The Chinese bamboo books relate that at this time the earth quaked, meteoric rain fell, and there was a five-planet alignment in 1688 BC. This was the collapse of the Xia dynasty, which was overthrown by a series of yellow fogs, a famine, and the darkening of the sun. The fall of the Xia dynasty was specifically due to the darkening of the sun, which some historians link to an eruption of the volcano Thera, because they sought to account for the darkness, not knowing about planet Phoenix. Historian W. J. Perry's work on the archaic civilization was published in his 551-page work entitled Children of the Sun in 1923 AD. He provides a wealth of evidence that the ruling families and dynasties called themselves Children of the Sun during the archaic civilization period, which abruptly ended in warring states and violence about 1688 BC. From this point on, the rulers quit referring to themselves as Children of the Sun, which, until this date, the sun was believed to be perfect and unchanging. The darkening of the sun shattered this old paradigm. Perry concluded by writings, "The destruction of the archaic civilization revealed fresh potentialities in man. Mother right gave way to father right. Military aristocracies came into being. War gods emerged, and the world began to take on a shape that we all recognize." In the chronological records of Marcus Varro, as conveyed by Augustine, the land of Argos in southern Greece was ruled by Phoronius, the son of Inachus, during the latter years of Isaac's life. It was during the reign of Phoronius of Argos, Mycenae, the flood of Ogyges occurred. This disaster afflicted the area that would later be called the Peloponnese. Augustine dates this disaster in the reign of Phoronius. Citing Varro's "Of the race of the Roman people," we read, "There occurred a remarkable celestial portent, for Castor reports that, in the brilliant star Venus, called Vesperugo by Plautus, and the lovely Hesperus by Homer, there occurred a strange prodigy, that it changed its colour, size, form, course, which never happened before nor since. Adrastus of Cyzicus and Dion of Naples, famous mathematicians, said that this occurred in the reign of Ogyges. The planet we call Venus today was not originally known by this name. This name is an etymological relic that has caused much historical confusion with that of Phoenix. In fact, the two are phonetically similar. Venus can be Voynix and Phoenix can be Phenus. Planet Venus never altered its course, changed shape, size and colour. What was seen was Phoenix, and evidence of this is the fact that the flood of Ogyges was accompanied by a great darkness. This event is also mentioned by Greek scholar Robert Graves as the flooding of the Thriasian plain, which he asserts was an historic event. The confusion with the planet we now call Venus derives from the fact that Phoenix transited between the orbit of Earth and Venus, crossing the ecliptic plane in a path unknown to the ancients, its passage from north to south. All the other planets, including Venus, follow the ecliptic. Phoenix does not. The Venus solution is commented on by researcher Frank Joseph. Joseph published the findings of elite scientists who met in 1997 AD in the fields of archaeology, archaeoastronomy, geology, paleobotany, climatology, astrophysics, and oceanography, who concluded that they determined by their findings that the ancient world had suffered a series of cataclysmic impacts and disasters. One date focused on, and this was an approximate, was about 1628 BC. This date is only 59 years from 1687 BC. Joseph then cites that this disaster occurred in the 9th year of the reign of King Amazigduga of the Hittites, when the king describes in a stone tablet seeing a great celestial body called Ninciana that other researchers pass off as Venus according to Joseph. This would have been 1687 BC. The 1629 BC date originated with a scientific analysis of tree ring samples taken from around the world, some even from the ancient bristle pines of California, from seabed deposits and ice cores. These findings gave the approximate of 1628 BC. A closer approximate is the accepted date for earthquakes and floods that destroyed the early civilization of Crete at about 1700 BC. This is only 13 years off. The destruction collapsed fortifications and preserved for archaeologists evidence that there were indeed giants alive in the Bronze Age. Bat-winged battle axes have been excavated at Crete, measuring a heroic 3.5 feet across, exhibited today on walls. Only men who stood 9 to 11 foot tall could have wielded such massive weapons. As Crete was ruined, so were other Mediterranean ports and cities. The famous story of the flooding of Joppa finds its origin with 1687 BC. Joppa was on the Canaanite coast, close to where Rephaim and Anakim giants resided. Joppa may have been the origin of the stranger Ogyges, who according to the oldest traditions was a leader of giants who washed ashore during the flooding. In fact, Ogyges is a name derived from a root meaning giant. That a disaster occurred is further seen in that stonemasons and architects left their tools laying about the Minoan ruins, as if they were in a hurry to leave. Many of the world's coastlines were permanently changed. A formerly thriving port in South America was shoved upward to an elevation of 12,000 feet, the entire mountainous range of the Andes razed overnight. The city of Tiwanaku, the ruins around Lake Titicaca, Pumapunka, the Urubamba Valley were all elevated and abandoned because of the frigid conditions. The ruins have been dated at approximately 1600 BC by radiocarbon analysis. The famous Gate of the Sun depicted angelic beings coming from heaven, Anunnaki, and a picture of Tammuz, the weeping god so popular in ancient Near Eastern iconography. With Tiwanaku uninhabitable, the people migrated to Cuzco according to ancient Incan tradition. Throughout the entire world, cities and civilizations were laid waste. It is a good assumption that millions of people died. The immense megalithic stoneworks of Baalbek were abandoned, as were those strange statues of heads on Easter Island. Archaeologists baffled as to why whole workshops have been excavated with tools lying about, as if men dropped them where they were. Thousands of islands vanished while others appeared. The basalt city of Metalinum, 11 square miles of gigantic earthworks, colossal pillars, temple edifices and artificial waterways of dense and heavy basement rock on Ponape Island was submerged, tilted and later partially resurfaced, where it lies today between Japan and Hawaii. This ruined city could have supported a population of 1 million people. The same fate was suffered by those who lived among the ruins on Yap Island in the Carolines. In Italy, the chitim in some communities at the base of Mount Vesuvius were totally buried alive under layers of volcanic pumice and ash at the exact same sites that would later become the Roman cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum that were also buried by the volcano in 79 BC. The island of Malta was also flooded over. The famous Hypogeum is located on Malta, an underground complex of great mystery once housing 7,000 skeletons, though it was not a burial chamber. Also Hagar Quim, a huge megalithic temple on Malta, shows evidence of its tsunami. A 3-foot layer of silt was deposited over the ruins, as well as at Tarxian on Malta, with its massive stone gates of round stones fitted to sockets, and the same 3-foot layer of silt. Gozo Island near Malta has similar ruins, called Gantija Temple, which means work of the giants. In this year Stonehenge was damaged, and locals on the isles of what we would later call Britain would erect some of the monuments, the enormous sarcens and the smaller blue stones. This is known as Stonehenge 3. Interestingly, Sir Norman Lockyer, oblivious to this 1687 BC cataclysm, dated the erection of Stonehenge at 1680 BC.